You've been lying to me, to us. Is this why you've been distant? Because of him? Claire's eyes brimmed with tears as she tried to explain, but her words only made James's pain worse. It started as nothing, I swear, she said. James Okafor's life seemed like the blueprint for happiness. At 32, he had built a respectable career as a software engineer, enjoyed weekends with his close-knit group of friends, and was preparing to marry the love of his life, Claire Donovan. Their relationship had blossomed over 4 years, filled with quiet adventures and mutual dreams. Claire's smile was the music of James's days, and her unwavering belief in him gave his life meaning. As the wedding date approached, James spent his evenings fine-tuning plans for their future. He envisioned a cozy suburban home, maybe a child or two, and Claire's radiant smile as their constant companion. Little did he know, the foundation of his seemingly perfect life had already begun to crack. Claire's growing obsession with fitness led her to spend hours at the new high-accent gym in town. While James admired her commitment, he couldn't shake an odd feeling whenever she mentioned her personal trainer, Damien. Damien Balogun was the kind of man who commanded attention the moment he entered a room. With his chiseled physique, magnetic charisma, and sharp wit, he had become the gym's most sought-after trainer. His sessions with Claire had initially seemed professional, but subtle changes in Claire's demeanor began to plant seeds of doubt in James's mind. Claire often returned from the gym glowing, her energy contagious. Damien suggested this new routine, she'd say, demonstrating an exercise James barely understood. While he smiled and nodded, a quiet unease gnawed at him. Why did her stories about the gym revolve around Damien? Why did she laugh a little too hard at his jokes, even when they were told secondhand? Besides, James played the violin well. One evening, as Claire prepared for yet another late session, James caught a glimpse of her phone screen. A message from Dee flashed across. "See you tonight. Can't wait." James froze, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. Something was wrong, but he wasn't ready to confront it. Not yet. James couldn't shake the image of the text message. The words replayed in his mind like a haunting melody, each repetition fueling his suspicion. Claire's smile that evening seemed forced, her usual warmth clouded by an undercurrent of secrecy. "You okay?" he asked casually, watching her pack her gym bag. "Of course," she replied with a quick peck on his cheek. "Just a little tired. I'll be back soon." Her words were light, but they carried the weight of something unspoken. James felt as though he were standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into a void of uncertainty. That night, sleep eluded him. Questions swirled in his mind, each more invasive than the last. Was it just his imagination? Was he overthinking Claire's newfound enthusiasm for the gym? Or was there something real behind his unease? He decided to confide in his best friend Nate the next day. B actually had some hope as well for Claire's future. President Galloway was considering adding mayor, and Nate stood laughing. "Man, you gotta trust your gut," Nate said after James relayed the events. "But don't jump to conclusions. Talk to her, be direct." James nodded, though the thought of confronting Claire sent a pang of fear through him. What if the answers were worse than his suspicions? The days that followed were a blur of growing tension. Claire's gym visits became more frequent, and her explanations increasingly vague. "We're just trying to push through a plateau," she said one evening, avoiding James's eyes. The once vibrant connection between them now felt strained, like a fraying rope. James began noticing little things, the way Claire guarded her phone, the new outfits she bought for the gym, the texts she quickly dismissed when he entered the room. Each observation was a needle pricking his heart, leaving him raw and bleeding. And one night, while Claire was in the shower, James's curiosity got the better of him. Her phone lay on the bedside table, screen dark and silent. His hands trembled as he unlocked it, guilt warring with desperation. Scrolling through her messages, he found Damien's name. The thread was filled with jokes, compliments, and plans that extended beyond the confines of the gym. His chest tightened as he read Damien's latest message. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." James sat frozen on the edge of the bed, Damien's words burning in his mind. He clenched the phone in his trembling hand as the sound of the shower stopped. Moments later, Claire stepped out, wrapped in a towel, her cheeks flushed. She stopped in her tracks when she saw the phone in James's hands. "What's this?" James's voice was low but carried a sharp edge. He held up the screen displaying the incriminating messages. Claire's face went pale and her hands flew to her mouth. "James, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice barely audible. "Not what it looks like?" James's voice rose, his hurt and anger spilling out. "Don't insult me, Claire. You've been lying to me, to us. Is this why you've been distant? Because of him?" Claire's eyes brimmed with tears as she tried to explain, but her words only made James's pain worse. "It started as nothing, I swear," she said. "It was just, I don't know, attention, I guess." But her voice broke. "I never meant to hurt you." "Never meant to hurt me?" James repeated bitterly. "You've destroyed us, Claire." His voice cracked, and he turned away, unable to look at her. That night, James slept on the couch, the distance between them growing into a chasm neither could cross. The morning light filtered through the windows, but it brought no clarity. James woke with a heavy heart, the events of the previous night replaying in his mind. Clea sat silently at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I made a terrible mistake, James. I was selfish, and I don't know how to fix this." James stared at her, his emotions a storm of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. "Do you even want to fix this?" he asked, his voice cold. Claire's silence was answer enough. The woman he had planned to spend his life with felt like a stranger. And what the person he used to be felt like a stranger. In the days that followed, James threw himself into work, avoiding Claire and the suffocating weight of their crumbling relationship. He confided in Nate again, who urged him to take time to process everything. "You deserve better than this," Nate said firmly. "Don't let her or that guy destroy you." James nodded, but the pain lingered. Nights were the hardest, filled with memories of what once was and the harsh reality of what remained. Trust, the foundation of their love, had been shattered, and James didn't know if it could ever be rebuilt. James decided he needed answers directly from Damien. The idea of facing him brought a mix of dread and determination. But James couldn't let the situation fester any longer. He arrived at the gym late in the evening, hoping to catch Damien during a quiet moment. Damien was finishing up a session when James approached. "We need to talk," James said, his voice steady but laced with tension. Damien's cocky smirk faltered for a moment, then returned. "James, right? What can I do for you?" Damien asked, feigning ignorance. The casual tone only fueled James's anger. "Stay away from Claire," James said firmly. "Whatever you think you're doing, it ends now." Damien crossed his arms, his smirk deepening. "Look, man, Claire's a grown woman. If she's unhappy with you, that's not my fault." The words hit James like a punch to the gut, but he refused to back down. "She made a mistake," James shot back, "but I'm not letting you destroy what we had." The conversation escalated quickly, both men's tempers flaring. Damien's dismissive attitude only intensified James's fury. The encounter ended with a warning from James, but the unresolved tension left him feeling more lost than ever. Back at home, Claire sensed the shift in James's demeanor. He told her about his confrontation with Damien, his voice raw with emotion. "I'm fighting for us, Claire, but I need to know if you're willing to fight too." Claire looked down, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know, James," she admitted. "I've been so confused. I need time to figure out what I want." James's heart sank. Her indecision felt like a betrayal all over again. "Take your time," he said quietly, "but don't expect me to wait forever." The days that followed were agonizing. James tried to focus on his own healing, but the uncertainty of Claire's decision loomed over him. He began to question whether their relationship was worth saving, or if it was time to let go and start anew. James's life began to revolve around the question of whether he should let go of Claire or continue fighting for a relationship that had become a source of pain. One evening, while sitting at a local bar, he found himself opening up to the bartender, a woman named Jenna, who had an uncanny ability to listen without judgment. Jenna had seen the look of heartbreak many times before. "Sometimes the hardest part is admitting when it's time to walk away," she said softly. after James finished his story. Her words struck a chord deep within him. James started visiting the bar more frequently, not for the drinks, but for Jenna's straightforward advice. Over time, she became an unlikely source of clarity. "You need to think about what makes you happy," Jenna said one night. "Not her, not him, you." Her words resonated, and for the first time in weeks, James felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps healing didn't mean fixing what was broken. It might mean starting over. James began to focus on himself. For too long, he'd centered his world around Claire and their relationship, neglecting his own needs and dreams. Inspired by Jenna's advice, he decided to revisit old hobbies and passions that once brought him joy. Photography had always been a love of his, and he found himself dusting off his old camera. He spent afternoons wandering the city, capturing moments of beauty and connection that he'd once overlooked. The act of creation gave him a sense of purpose, a distraction from the pain that still lingered. Claire's presence in the apartment remained tense. They spoke little, their interactions reduced to polite exchanges that barely scratched the surface of their deeper turmoil. But James noticed something in himself, a growing resolve. He could no longer base his happiness on Claire's choices. He needed to reclaim his life, no matter how difficult the journey. One evening, Jenna's words echoed in his mind. "You need to think about what makes you happy." He made a decision. Tomorrow, he would talk to Claire. It was time for answers, closure, and, if necessary, a new chapter. "Oh, idea." Without her, the conversation with Claire was inevitable, but that didn't make it easier. James found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a familiar yet distant sight. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady but firm. Claire looked up, her face a mixture of guilt and weariness. "I know," she replied quietly, setting her phone down. "I've been thinking a lot about us." James nodded, sitting across from her. "I have too. Claire, I love you. I always have. But I can't keep living in this limbo. I need to know if you're committed to making this work, or if you've already chosen another path." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she took a deep breath. "James, I've made so many mistakes. I let myself get swept up in something that should never have happened, but I'm not sure if I can fix this or if I even deserve to." Her words hit James like a punch to the gut. He'd been holding on to the hope that she might fight for their relationship, but her hesitation was answer enough. "You're right," he said after a long pause. "Maybe we can't fix this, but I can't keep putting my life on hold. I need to move forward, with or without you." Claire's tears fell freely as James stood and walked to the door. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said softly before leaving, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift from his shoulders. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change for James. He moved out of the apartment he'd shared with Claire, finding a small but cozy place of his own. It wasn't much, but it felt like a sanctuary, a space where he could rebuild his life on his own terms. Jenna's friendship became a cornerstone of his new beginning. She encouraged him to join a local photography club where he met people who shared his passion for storytelling through images. For the first time in months, James felt a sense of belonging, a community that supported him without judgment or expectation. One day, while attending a photography exhibit, James's work caught the eye of a gallery owner. "You have a unique perspective," the man said, offering James the opportunity to showcase his photos in an upcoming event. The validation was a turning point, reigniting a confidence he'd thought lost forever. Though the scars of his past remained, they no longer defined him. Each day was a step toward healing, and with each step, James rediscovered pieces of himself he'd forgotten. Life wasn't perfect, but it was his, and that was enough. James's new life felt more fulfilling than he had anticipated, but he realized there was one part of his old life he didn't want to leave unresolved: his family. In his isolation, he had drifted from his parents and younger sister, Emma, who had always been his biggest supporter. One weekend, James decided to visit his childhood home. Emma greeted him with a tight hug. "It's about time," she said with a grin, her eyes full of warmth. Over dinner, he shared bits of his journey, leaving out the grittier details, but focusing on his growth and his new passion for photography. "I'm proud of you," his mother said, squeezing his hand. "Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to start over." But look at you. For the first time in a long while, James felt the unconditional love of his family. And it reminded him that he wasn't as alone as he'd thought. While James continued to move forward, his past wasn't completely behind him. One evening, he received a text from Claire. "Can we talk?" it read. His chest tightened. He had avoided contact with her since their separation, but curiosity and lingering emotions compelled him to agree. They met at a coffee shop. Claire looked different, tired, remorseful. "I wanted to apologize," she began, "for everything. I hurt you in ways I can't take back, and I'm so sorry." James listened silently, the old pain surfacing, but feeling less sharp than before. "Thank you," he said finally. "I've spent a lot of time trying to understand what happened, and while it doesn't excuse anything, I've realized we were both unhappy in ways we didn't address." Their conversation ended amicably with no promises of reconciliation, but a sense of closure that James hadn't realized he needed. He walked away feeling lighter, ready to embrace his future. Through the photography club, James grew close to a fellow member named Leela. She was a graphic designer with a quick wit and a contagious laugh that put James at ease. Their friendship deepened as they worked on collaborative projects, often losing track of time as they shared ideas and stories. One evening, after a successful gallery showcase featuring their work, Lila confessed, "You know, I'm glad I met you. You make life feel a little brighter." James smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. "The feeling's mutual," he replied. For the first time since his breakup, he allowed himself to consider the possibility of love again. Not as a replacement, but as something new and beautiful. James found himself smiling more these days. His friendship with Lila had blossomed into something deeper, though neither of them had voiced it yet. They spent evenings exploring the city, her pointing out quirky murals, him capturing them with his camera. Their shared curiosity created a bond that felt refreshingly simple and genuine. For the first time in his travels, Sam thought that maybe they would talk. One evening, Lila invited James to a small gathering at her apartment. Her friends were welcoming, their laughter filling the room like a melody. For the first time in a long while, James felt part of something bigger than himself. As the night wound down, Lila pulled him aside. "You've got this quiet strength about you," she said. "It's inspiring." James's heart raced. "That's because I've met people who make it easier to be myself," he replied, his voice soft but sincere. Lila's smile lingered, and in that moment, James felt the first flicker of new love. James's past had a way of creeping back, especially on quiet nights. One evening, he received a call from an unknown number. "James, it's Damien," the voice said, cool and unrepentant. "Can we meet?" Anger bubbled beneath James's calm exterior, but he agreed, curious about what Damien could possibly want. They met at a crowded cafe, the noise serving as a buffer for their tense exchange. Damien leaned back, his posture relaxed. I just wanted to clear the air. No hard feelings, right?" James's gaze was steady. "Hard feelings?" he repeated. "You destroyed my relationship and caused more pain than you'll ever understand. But I've moved on, and honestly, I pity you." Damien's smirk faltered. James stood, leaving Damien speechless. For the first time, James felt free from the shadow of betrayal, a man no longer defined by the actions of others.